So in order for this to hook up to the API, we are expecting a little extra hidden input here in the HTML with the value of the API call we want to make. No, we haven't made any API calls yet, so I'm just going to make one called NewMeal. And basically when we submit this, this will include a call to NewMeal, so this information gets submitted to the right place. To carry on working, we really need to take a look at the console for PHP. PHP errors is what it is in Cloud9 and how Apache and PHP is configured, but obviously it's different depending on your work environment. But right here, all errors end up in this file. Well, that looks terrible, so let's open a new terminal and tail that file. Change directory to Pålegg. Tail, and we do an F to make it live tail it. And here we go. This is currently our PHP output. If we now we have the new hidden field set in here, go in here and submit A, B, and C. None of the fields are set to required yet, so you can just submit it. It's going to tell you an API here, NewMeal, does not exist because we haven't made NewMeal yet. So how we do that is basically, well, we can just hijack this one and call NewMeal, because we don't need the example anymore. As we're sending in a form, everything comes in as post data, as it always does in PHP. We have a little logging function called L, and it's very handy. It will make the log look beautiful. So let's try to resubmit this form, and we now can see we got this printed out. In the post data, we have the API, NewMeal, title, description, max file size, picture is blank, and the author. We didn't submit any. So we're getting the data through, and well, we don't need this part anymore, do we? But before I do that, you can see here we got the database hooked up into here, so you can use that as a database object. And the database structure that it's using is SQL. It's this dependency. If you want to look up the documentation, all that is here. Right, so get the input data. One of the first issues we're encountering obviously is the fact that when we submit the form, it blanks out every time and it's supposed to remember the information, so we need to make that happen. We need to return the result basically, and return the same data back to it so it knows what to render. You're also going to have a little success flag here, so it knows if the form failed or not. And then we return that. Now at the moment that actually is not going to make any difference for us, because we work in a very manual way where we are in control and charge of everything. It doesn't do that much automatically, which is a good thing I find, because then you're in control. What did happen on the other hand is that if you take a look at what actually is going through here, and it's a very good way to debug, let's do JSON this. That's going to call the JSON converter of the this variable, so we can read it in the HTML and see what data the handlebars actually has access to within this scope. So here we see clearly that we have the post result of NewMeal, and that's the array with the title A, description B, author C, success false. We also have access to the current page name and all these other variables, but for now we're going to worry about these guys. So what this means is the fact that we have access to do post result dot NewMeal dot title, and that will contain the A that we submitted. And we obviously want to spew that back in here so the value is remembered. And the same goes here, except it's a text area. So we're gonna put the description here. And then we have the value here for the author. With a reload, we can now see that A, B, seems to be something here now suddenly. That's why we don't put this on multiple lines. Got to do the text area on one line, so otherwise it puts in lots of white spaces. A, B, C, and we submit it, and the data spews back out again after reload instead of clearing. Now it's good to be able to tell the user if we submitted the form in the wrong way, so we are missing, for example, the top variable. So we're going to do some quick error handling here, or submission validation. What we are basically doing here, we'll do that for all three of them, is checking if it's a truthy value, and if it isn't, we will return the results plus an array containing some error information of what went wrong. And we want to hook those up so those errors display in the right areas, which is why we are sending an error tag, which is this, and together with an error message. Now this in itself won't do anything unless we do something with it. So what is going on here? We are doing a logic statement, because in handlebars an if statement can only check if something is true or false. You can't compare two values. A logic statement is something we write ourselves, and it's like a handlebars helper. You can write them yourself in this PHP file here in the handlebars, so you can extend the functionality, and it's actually this piece of code right here. Now when you write these, you also have to implement them both in JavaScript and in PHP, as they will be used both front end and back end in able to render the handlebars. And we can see it is quite simplistic, where if the gets a string input with these, it will do that logic comparison and do an if-else statement with that. So we do an if the error tag is equal to title, then we will display the error for the NewMeal API call. And we will do the same for the other ones as well. Now let's see if that worked by submitting this. Here we go. We already have an error popping up, which is great. Let's see if the other ones are working as well. Yeah, obviously it's only going to display the top error because in the API we decide to return as soon as we hit the first error. So we will see if the second error works by filling something into the top field and to the next field and to the final piece. We're still not storing this data, so it's just passing back and forth. So with all that working, the next part would obviously be to get the image to work. For that we're going to use a dependency called bulletproof. And the reason we'll be using that is because there's a lot of security issues obviously related to uploading files to a web server and dealing with that, and this one takes care of that hassle for you, making sure that it's the right compatibility with the image file, and yeah, that everything works the way it should do. So we're going to quickly take and install that. Open up a new terminal window. So in order to install this, it's as simple as doing a composer require into our folder. And that's it. Now you can see in the vendor here all our dependencies are. The one we installed right now is bulletproof from that one, and we also have the eSQL here and Light Candy, which is the handlebars rendering that we're using. The part I'm going to write now is mainly based on the documentation from Light Candy, so it's going to be, yeah, I'm just going to rush through it and not explain too much about it. Right, so we have written our image uploader. Hopefully there's no typos here right now. We're just integrating the error messages that they display with our error system, and if we are not sure what the errors are, we will just throw that it failed, and if none is selected, we are going to say as none is selected. And obviously we have to implement that also in the HTML, which will be here, where we're going to do something similar to previously. We'll do a logic statement, and this time ask for the picture tag, show what error is in there. We can submit that and see if we, yes, indeed we get an error. So basically it will be running in the API here, and it gets to this point and says no image was uploaded, and then this code never ran. So let's select the file. Actually, this is bothering me. We should make this look a little bit prettier. Let's do that. Right, we already have an error class here, which is why it looks like that. Let's see how the errors look now. Yes, that looks a little bit nicer. Should have a little bit of padding on top maybe. There we go. Back to business. So the final step would now be to store this. I don't want to upload an image until we know that we can store this information. Yeah, one thing I should point out. Yeah, so obviously what we're talking about here, we set the location of where the image is going to be uploaded. That'll be in document root /upload. Now that folder doesn't exist, so let's create that. In the document root we have an uploads folder. Then we're going to store these changes to the database. Right, so we are storing into the meals table, which we haven't created. We need to create that first. And it has these columns. We're going to have title, description, the author, the image, so we know what name this is. And the name is generated by bulletproof. All that is in their documentation. And then we're going to say that if we got this far, we're going to be successful. So now we're flipping the switch on the success, so we know that there's no errors. We need to create that database, don't we? So back here we were talking about this is the database structure. Now this is quite special. We're just going to type in the name of the database, and then the name of your table, and then the name of your columns, and then how the columns are structured. Right, that's the database structure we're going to be using for this. We obviously are having an ID for all the meals. We're going to have a title, description, and author. We're going to store the image location, or the name. And we're going to have some votes, because we're going to be able to put a little heart on the meals. And we want to have a timestamp so we can order them in ascending or descending order, depending on the time and the votes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is ideal for a database for development testing, where it just configures the database automatically. It doesn't get very advanced. It doesn't do index keys and only sets up your primary key. So it's a very simple way to keep going quickly and get the database up and running. So if we open up a new terminal here and do MySQL user root, and there's no password on the ones on the Cloud9 because they're all contained, and do show databases, we can see that we have the example database set up. That one we can drop. And if we do show database again, we can see now that the database is gone, and we're going to create our own one here called Pålegg. Yeah, there's one thing we need to change obviously here, is the fact that we are not longer called to an example database, we call it the database Pålegg. And one thing which happens here is the fact that when this structure changes, it creates a hash of it, and that's the hash file here. Now that lives in the temp directory, and it only is a little MD5 hash of the table. And basically whenever this table changes, it will rerun the database setup, but it won't delete anything, but it will only create things and modify and append things. So if you wanted to delete stuff, you drop the database or drop the column or etc. But it will always alter or add things in for you. And this is very simplistic database setup script, which is less than 100 lines of code here. And the actual database interface is the dependency that we're using is SQL. So this is only for the setup of creating this table. So basically, after this is changed and the website has loaded one time, it detects that this is different from the database hash, and it will run the setup again. So if you take a little look here at show databases now, we see we have a new one called Pålegg. We're going to use that one, and we're going to do show tables, and we have a meal table, and we have got all the columns set up as we expect them to, with the title, description, author, etc. So actually this might start to function right now. We are inserting it like that, and the values in here. So let's give it a shot. Something didn't work quite right. It says no image were uploaded, and it cleared out all our values. Now let's have a little look here. The error log says that the database was set up earlier and we had no picture uploaded. Let's see, why could that happen? So we can see there's something which is not working here, because we are uploading the file and through here we ending up with an error at this point. And that's a little bit early, but we can try to investigate what's going on with the special log command. Now this L function for log, you can see under the utilities here, and it's just a little beautiful login function that prints out everything in colors and makes things look nice in the terminal. Okay, we found the problem. Obviously, looking at documentation, we forgot to include this in our form data. And we need to add that into our form, and that is going to make the difference between the files uploading. Okay, let's see if that did the trick. Oh yes, it did something at least. It says still an error, but now we have an object here with a picture, name, the file and everything. Okay, seems like that actually worked. I've done a little mistake here where we were going to check for the contents past the file's picture in, obviously not the entire file's array. So let's clean this back up again to the code that it was, and we had a little typo here and there was multiple little issues here, but we're past those now. Here we go. This would be the correct way to write it. We check if the variable exists or if the file is uploaded, and then we're going to put it to the image processor and save it into the server. And let's give that another try and see if everything works after our little adjustments. So let's try and see how that submits. It obviously goes back to the same page because we haven't made it progress on the success statement. But we now should see, yes, we have 2 files in our upload folder, and that's looking pretty hunky-dory. And if we also take a look into our MySQL, and there we go, we have our 2 entries entered into the database. Now obviously the next step would be to get this one to show a success message. So heading back to our HTML, we're going to create a new file here, which is success. Okay, with the new one here, we obviously are only rendering the form, and we want to render a success when it's been done successfully. And the same way we done earlier, we have the post results, and we can use that as an if statement. So we do if post results NewMeal dot success. We are going to show the other one. So that's compiling. We can do another one, which is my title 2, description 2, and Christopher 2, and we will upload the same image again, why not, and share that magic. And there we go, we ended up on the done page. Not quite styled correctly, but it will do for now. We'll just carry on, and this will link us back to the front page, and I think that's it for this time. Obviously the next step would be to get all the things we got into the database to display into the front page and render this nice and neatly like we have on the live version, where we have our little quick yogurt snack and these little vote buttons that you can click on and remove your vote and add your vote in. But I think this is a pretty decent start, and we got quite far relatively quickly. So the camera battery died on me. I'm just wrapping it up here. We have basically got the first half of it done. Now we need to render the results out, and I think that was quite a successful start. Just want to say this is obviously not a tutorial, more a let's code. Not trying to directly teach things. I know it's going way too fast for that, but I thought it's interesting to just show the workflow and a bit how things are done. I especially enjoy working, and I think it's quite a good setup to be in control. And obviously I didn't go into all the details of how everything works under the hood, but in basics it's quite simple, and it's really easy to change, for example, the structure that it expects, and everything here is on the surface. You don't have to conform to the style of the framework. You are the framework. See you next time.